Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. The top stories today. Another round of help for small businesses could soon be in the works. The top White House economic advisor hinted at more relief aid over the weekend, as more states are set to loosen up business restrictions later this week. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there's enormous evidence the virus came from a lab in Wuhan. He said over the weekend China has a history of letting disease spread beyond its borders. Lockdown measures in some countries in Europe are easing up this week, but countries like India and Russia report that new cases are on the rise. And Israel's Supreme Court began a two-day hearing on Sunday. It could mean a further disruption to the country's leadership arrangements. The number of coronavirus or CCP virus deaths in the US has now passed 67,000. Still, more states are set to loosen restrictions on businesses. They're trying to mitigate the economic fallout. Governors who haven't moved towards reopening face pressure and protests. Meanwhile, a top Trump economic advisor says there could be another round of relief for small businesses.
With more than half of states relaxing coronavirus restrictions in some form, others are feeling pressure. And in states like California and Michigan, protests. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer said Sunday she's not been moved.
We have to listen to the epidemiologist and our public health expert.
Maryland Governor Larry Hogan's response.
Sadly, we had far more people die yesterday in Maryland than we had protesters.
Public health experts agree, underscoring the importance of caution.
If we open up too soon, we're going to see a resurgence of cases, a lot more people getting sick and dying, and we're going to have to shut back down again.
But contributing to the restlessness is economic anxiety. More than 30 million Americans have filed for unemployment benefits in the last 6 weeks. The Trump administration said Sunday that 2.2 million loans worth $175 billion have been made in the second round of the Paycheck Protection Program. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said another round of small business funding may be considered.
I guess what I would say to you at this particular juncture, let's execute the continuation of what we've already done. Let's see what the results are.
The U.S. Senate returns to Capitol Hill Monday with more coronavirus relief to be a point of discussion.
President Trump says Chinese officials couldn't handle the CCP virus outbreak after initially trying to cover it up. He says this embarrassed the regime.
In a town hall meeting with Fox News, President Trump said China was embarrassed by the virus outbreak. During the May 3rd interview, he also said that the outbreak definitely started in Wuhan, China. When asked if the disease was purposely put out to the world, he said he doesn't think so, but that it was something that quickly grew beyond the regime's control.
And my opinion is they made a mistake. They tried to cover it. They tried to put it out. It's like a fire. It's really like trying to put out a fire. They couldn't put out the fire.
He explained that the regime let people leave Wuhan despite the danger, while not letting people into China. He also mentioned that the regime didn't let U.S. scientists in to investigate the situation. They let the WHO in only after the situation became more serious. Hours after the interview, Trump sent out tweets aimed at media outlets criticizing his handling of the outbreak. One of the tweets says that he responded to the virus outbreak as quickly as possible based on the information he was getting from the intelligence community. He wrote, "Intelligence has just reported to me that I was correct and that they did not bring up the coronavirus subject matter until late into January, just prior to my banning China from the U.S." Another tweet mentions that he let U.S. citizens back into the country safely, writing the people that were allowed were heavily scrutinized and tested U.S. citizens.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has also commented on the origins of the virus. He said Sunday there's enormous evidence supporting the idea that it originated in a laboratory in Wuhan rather than a market.
China has a history of infecting the world, and they have a history of running substandard laboratories.
Pompeo said on ABC's This Week that China has spread diseases to the rest of the world in the past. He stressed he had no reason to believe the virus was spread deliberately, but intensified his criticism of China's response to the outbreak, saying it must be held accountable for the pandemic. And Secretary of Defense Mark Esper today warned of malign interference from countries such as China and Russia. He said some countries are using the pandemic to push their geopolitical interests in Europe and cause divisions in NATO.
Defense Secretary Mark Esper on Monday said Russia and China are taking advantage of the CCP virus emergency to put their interests forward in Europe. He described Chinese efforts to promote Huawei mobile phone network equipment as malign. Esper told Italian newspaper La Stampa that some countries are trying to use the pandemic as a means to invest in critical industry and infrastructure in countries affected by the virus. He was answering a question about Russia and China sending aid to Italy. Esper said there would be a long-term effect on security for countries that allow these investments, and that potential opponents were almost certain to create divisions in NATO and Europe, naming Huawei and 5G as an example of this. He said dependence on Chinese suppliers could make crucial systems vulnerable to interruption, manipulation, and espionage. Huawei and another Chinese firm, ZTE, deny their gear poses a security threat. Both China and Russia offered support to Italy, sending doctors, medical equipment, and face masks to the country.
A historic moment for the U.S. Supreme Court. The justices will start hearing arguments by phone for the first time ever. The court announced it will ask questions in order of seniority, with Chief Justice John Roberts going first. Each justice exhausts their line of questioning, then the next justice begins. If there's any time, any remaining questions can be asked after the first round is over. Normally, the court is a hot bench, with justices frequently interrupting each other and the lawyers before them. The move signals the court wants to ensure an orderly process with as few interruptions as possible. The court will hear 10 cases over the next 2 weeks. The sessions will mark the first time in history that members of the public can listen into arguments in real time. And airline shares are tanking today after Warren Buffett revealed he's dumped his airline stocks. American, United, Delta and Southwest Airlines all fell between 8 and 10% this morning.
Airline shares tumbled on Monday morning. The fall comes after Warren Buffett announced on Saturday that his company, Berkshire Hathaway, had sold all of his airline shares because of the uncertainty caused by the pandemic. Buffett is one of the most successful and influential investors in the world. When he moves, many others move with him. He said, "The world has changed for the airlines, and I don't know how it's changed, and I hope it corrects itself in a reasonably prompt way." Air travel has been decimated during lockdowns, and many airlines have grounded their planes. Buffett said even after things have eased up, he isn't sure when people will feel safe flying again. Until that happens, airlines will still have to cover their operating costs. It would be a tough decision to decide whether to sustain billions of dollars in operating losses when you don't know how long it's going to happen or occur. Buffett invested in the airlines in 2016 after telling shareholders in 2007 he would never back the industry again.
Vice President Mike Pence says he should have worn a mask during his visit to the Mayo Clinic last week. The Vice President made the comment during a Fox News town hall on Sunday. The response comes in contrast to what Pence said shortly after the visit. He originally stated that he was tested for the virus frequently and always tested negative. The Mayo Clinic's policy calls for all who enter to wear a mask. Pence and his team were made aware of that before the trip. President Trump says he doesn't plan on wearing a mask while in public. The CCP virus pandemic appears to be easing in some parts of Europe, but it seems to be getting worse in India and Russia.
People around the world are starting to take advantage of looser lockdown measures. Health experts are warning of a potential second wave of infections as people head outdoors. They say more virus testing is needed. Italy reopened parks and public gardens from Monday. The country reported the lowest number of deaths since a national lockdown began in March, on March 10th. Like Italy, Spain reported fewer new cases. And Belgium is relaxing its lockdown measures from Monday, too. But India is seeing a rapid rise in new infections. Lockdown continues for 2 more weeks, but with some measures lifted, construction workers and self-employed people return to work in New Delhi, one of the country's virus hotspots. In Russia, new reported cases rose past 10,000 for the first time. New Zealand marked a significant moment on Monday with no new cases, prompting Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to consider restarting travel to and from Australia. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to announce potential lockdown lifting plans this week. But with the UK still reporting hundreds of deaths a day, it's unclear yet when the lifting may take place.
Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is extending the country's national state of emergency till the end of the month.
At the moment, we are still seeing a considerable number of cases of new infections, and the number of infected people hasn't decreased enough. There are areas where medical facilities are still under pressure. Thus, the experts say we need to continue the measures we are taking now for the time being.
Abe said today the nation would keep aiming to reduce person-to-person contact by 80% for Tokyo, Osaka, and 11 other prefectures hardest hit by the virus.
South Koreans flocked to an amusement park in Seoul on Sunday, taking advantage of relaxed social distancing rules and a long weekend holiday. The government said it would further relax virus measures starting May 6th.
Most of the visitors were seen wearing masks. The park also required people to maintain an over 6-foot distance and have their temperature checked at the entrance. Taking advantage of the eased restrictions, Kim Ho-hyun visited the Lotte World amusement park with his family.
First of all, it feels great to be out with my family. Still, it has not been long since the social distancing rules were lifted, and we are still cautious. However, it looks like disinfection efforts are going well, and people are wearing masks, so I think it should be fine.
Amusement parks in South Korea were never closed, but few visitors had ventured out there in recent weeks. South Korea has largely managed to bring the outbreak under control without major disruptions. Movie theaters are also open again. Moviegoer Seo Dong-gwan went to see his first film this weekend since the outbreak.
I'm still worried about going out, but as long as people are following guidelines from the government, we can prevent the infections at a certain level, I believe.
The South Korean government announced it will further relax social distancing rules starting on May 6th. It will allow a phased reopening of businesses as well as gatherings and events, as long as people follow disinfection guidelines.
Israel's top court is deciding if corruption charges should bar Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from forming a government.
Israel's Supreme Court began a 2-day hearing on Sunday to determine whether Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been indicted for corruption, will be allowed to form a new government. A ruling against Netanyahu would likely trigger a snap election. It would be the fourth since April 2019. Netanyahu and his main rival, Benny Gantz, signed an agreement last month to form a unity government under which they'd take turns leading Israel. After 3 elections, neither of them won. In power for more than a decade and currently head of a caretaker government, right-wing Netanyahu will serve as Prime Minister of a new administration for 18 months before handing the reins to centrist Gantz, according to the deal. But several groups, including opposition parties, have petitioned the country's highest court to nullify the deal and bar Netanyahu from leading the government, citing the criminal proceedings against him. On Sunday, several dozen protesters staged a demonstration against Netanyahu near the Supreme Court.
And coming up, Chinese authorities take issue with one woman's gift of Bibles and masks to her family in China. Find out more when we return.
How do we get to this point? Back in December, the coronavirus was already spreading in Wuhan, and the Chinese Communist Party was covering it up and punishing the whistleblowers who dared to report the truth. Their actions led to this pandemic, which now has us, in America, stuck in our homes and losing our jobs. To this very day, the Communist Party is still lying, making it more critical than ever for us to get honest reporting about China. The Epoch Times is able to bring you the uncensored truth because we maintain a network of underground sources inside of China, hidden from the censors of the communist government. For instance, our investigative team has been contacting individual funeral homes, hospitals, and they've obtained leaked internal documents which show that China's official numbers are massively underreported by a factor of at least 10. If you're looking for an honest source of news that can keep you informed and safe, check out The Epoch Times. Go to readepoch.com and try your first month for just $1 and get real journalism delivered straight to your doorstep.
Welcome back. Giving masks has become a way for some Chinese people to show their love to their families. One woman, however, became a target of the CCP because she sent masks and Bibles from America to China.
Xiu Nuo says she mailed some masks and several Bibles to her family when the epidemic broke out in China. She was shocked to hear her father was harassed by the CCP when the Bibles were discovered in the mail.
My father was taken to the police station to be interrogated. The police officers think I must belong to an anti-Chinese religious movement overseas, or that I might want to bring my family here to fight against China. In short, the police took my father away from home to interrogate him, then quarantined him in very poor conditions, and he had to pay the costs of being quarantined. My father is very old. He was hurt greatly, both physically and mentally.
She donated 6,000 medical masks to a hospital in Los Angeles. She expressed hope that Americans will understand that the Chinese people are also victims of the pandemic and that the CCP caused the outbreak to spread.
I believe many innocent people in the world would not have died if the communist regime and the Communist Party had immediately announced to the world the true information about the virus when it just happened. That is to say, the Chinese regime and the CCP did a very bad thing and cost many people lives. I am very angry about that.
Xu says during the pandemic, she came to understand the true nature of the CCP. She says the regime has slaughtered people and persecuted faith groups and hopes people will learn from her experience and stay away from the communist regime.
Taiwan's Premier Soccer League has been attracting interest from fans around the world. It's one of the few leagues currently playing closed-door matches.
Soccer, along with Taiwan's national sport baseball, has been allowed by the authorities to play matches without any fans in attendance since their season started in mid-April.
I think the key to Taiwan's league kicking off is that our epidemic prevention has been very successful and there's consensus among all citizens about this. Thanks to this, 2 sports, including our baseball season, have started. We are taking this opportunity and have made some adjustments to our live broadcast. For example, we'll put one men's league soccer match on YouTube every week with English commentary for everyone to watch.
Unlike baseball, soccer doesn't normally gain much attention in Taiwan, but the players are in good spirits, seeing that more than 10,000 people are watching worldwide.
I think for Taiwan is a great opportunity as a country, to be known, and definitely a lot of people are watching. I think the first game was more than 14,000 people online, so I think it's a good opportunity for Taiwan. Yeah.
Taiwan's early intervention and preventative measures gained praise worldwide for their success in containing the spread of the virus.
Taiwan has 432 cases and only 6 deaths in a population of around 24 million. And coming up in UK and Europe news, the European Commission calls for donations to aid the development of a vaccine. That while also praising journalists in the fight against the virus-related disinformation. Find out more after the break.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
%90 of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Welcome back. Now we head over to NTD's Neil Woodrow in London with the latest European news.
Hello and welcome to NTD UK, bringing you UK and Euro news. I am Neil Woodrow. The European Union hopes to raise the equivalent of around $8.10 billion in a pledging event launched today to fund research into a vaccine for the CCP virus. It also aims to develop new treatments and more efficient testing.
The European Union launched the Coronavirus Global Response Initiative on Monday. Various countries, including France, Germany, Italy and Norway, joined the EU to call for donations. The UK also pledged its support.
The money collected will help accelerate the development and deployment of universally available and affordable vaccination, treatment, and diagnostics.
Funds will be directed towards the needs identified by the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, GPMB, an independent body assembled by the World Health Organization and the World Bank Group. The WHO identified 76 vaccine candidates to receive funding from the initiative. Once produced, two main organizations will have ownership of the vaccines, treatments and tests. These organizations develop vaccines for people in developing countries and countries at risk. Both organizations were founded by billionaire Bill Gates. And it doesn't stop there. The initiative aims to collect funds on a rolling basis, with new targets announced as soon as one is reached.
This is just the beginning, as more will be needed in the future.
Countries that participate in pledging funding are not guaranteed to receive vaccines, treatments or tests paid for by the initiative. Instead, the fruits of the funding will go to countries in need rather than those who paid.
We go over to Spain, where lockdown measures are beginning to lift. People there can now go outdoors to exercise after nearly 2 months of staying in.
Spaniards jogging and cycling along the streets of Madrid. Adults in Spain were allowed to exercise outside over the weekend for the first time in 7 weeks. A strict lockdown lifted at last, providing welcome relief for many. Happy we feel free, she said.
It's basic for physical and mental health. It is basic to allow people to do sport.
Another resident said she found it really difficult not being allowed to go and enjoy the outdoors, but she managed by staying calm and untroubled. The government has implemented a shift system to avoid overcrowding. For most people, walking outside or playing sports takes place between 6 and 10 in the morning, or in the evening from 8 to 11. Children get a chance to play outside between midday and 7 p.m, with the remaining times kept for vulnerable people and the elderly. Parks and gardens are yet to open in Madrid, but for some keen joggers, the temptation is just too great. Spain is one of the countries worst hit by the CCP virus that spread across the globe from China.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez made mask wearing compulsory on public transport from today, as the country continues to ease its strict lockdown measures. Sunday the 3rd of May was World Press Freedom Day. The European Union paid tribute to journalists yesterday in a declaration. It said journalism, both online and offline, plays an essential role in democratic societies, and especially during the CCP virus pandemic. High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy of the EU, Josep Borrell, wrote, "In times of uncertainty, more than ever, access to reliable fact-checked information that is free from undue interference and influence is crucial and contributes to a more resilient society." He also wrote, "Journalism helps to detect and counter disinformation." Borrell spoke to the European Parliament about disinformation last week. He said foreign disinformation and manipulation is a critical challenge of the present day.
Intentional and coordinated disinformation campaigns should be treated as a hybrid threat to European and to global security.
He said the EU is expanding a campaign to combat disinformation as a result of the virus crisis. The campaign initially focused on Russian state and non-state actors, but the pandemic has taken the work in a new global direction. A security and international relations expert at the Alliance for Securing Democracy in Brussels spoke to a Dutch media on Wednesday. She said Chinese and Russian state-backed disinformation are becoming more similar. There was always a lot of attention on Russia sowing chaos and distress. What China does now is comparable. An expert from the Oxford Internet Institute, part of Oxford University in the UK, spoke last week about the impact of false information about the virus. He said it reaches 1 billion social media user accounts around the world.
Much of this content is generated by state-run agencies, and much of it, and almost all of it, is in English. So it's targeted at people in the UK, people in the US, English language users.
He said Russia and China are the largest generators of state-backed content. And an update on the development of a COVID-19 tracing app in the UK. At the daily media briefing yesterday, Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove announced the trials of a new app would begin.
And this week, we will be piloting new test, track and trace procedures on the Isle of Wight, with a view to having them in place more widely later this month.
The government expects this to be one component of a number of measures to be introduced as a result of the virus. And that's all from us today. Till next time, goodbye.
There's still to come. A full moon this Thursday may make it hard to see one of the year's best meteor showers, but there could still be a way to catch a glimpse. Find out more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
"90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board."
Welcome back. A meteor shower from Halley's Comet will peak on Tuesday, but a nearly full moon will make it hard to see in the Northern Hemisphere. This year, the meteor shower coincides with a supermoon on May 7th, but stargazers might have another chance to see the shower just before dawn next Sunday. Otherwise, as with the famed Halley's Comet, there's always next year. Earth crosses the comet's orbital path each spring between April and May. Halley's Comet itself won't be visible again until at least 2061. And Prickles the sheep, described as an expert in social isolation, has helped raise thousands of dollars for refugees through a Guess the Weight competition.
We believe that Prickles, as a little lamb, was trapped in a bush block at the back of our farm and separated from the rest of the sheep. Well, on Good Friday, it was my son's 6th birthday, so we went up to the back of our farm to have a little birthday party. When across the dam we saw this huge round thing, this absolutely rotund sheep. And so we thought, oh my goodness, what is that? And then my husband went missing, and he rang us about 15 minutes later, and he had trapped this sheep, leapt on it, and was holding it down, and he needed us to all come and help to wrestle this huge sheep into the back of his car. The response to Prickles' reappearance has been extraordinary. When we found her, we were joking about how Prickles was an expert at social isolation, and then we thought we could use Prickles as an example to help people who aren't so lucky at isolating. So we started a competition where people could guess the weight of Prickles' fleece, and the money would go towards UNHCR. Prickles' fleece will be donated to UNHCR, and they're going to make something from her fleece that will auction off to raise more money.
That's the latest updates for now. Thank you for tuning in. You can catch up again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.